Hello and welcome back. We're taking a look today at resolving conflict, all of it, for all time. Totally and completely. That's it. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. And I will submit right off that nothing less than total peace, nothing less than the peace of God is worthy of you as the Son of God. Nothing else is worthy of you but the peace of God, which is total. So you might ask the question, and legitimately so, how do I do this? Where do I turn? Where do I look for this peace? Well, it's not in the world outside. It's within that you look for this. Now, if this sounds too simple, well, it's very simple. We just don't accept it. We don't accept the sheer simplicity of being. God is. And all that that two-word sentence implies, namely that only God is. All else is illusion. In other words, everything that appears to be in conflict is illusion. Why? There is no separation of any kind. There is no separate other with whom you can possibly be in conflict. So here in the world where we believe exactly the opposite, how do we find our way back, so to speak, to find our way home, if you want to call it that? Well, we dedicate a lot of our lives to either being in conflict or attempting by the terms and dictates that the world has made up to resolve conflict. There are entire university departments dedicated to conflict resolution. I know from personal experience. I was on the faculty of one of those for 8 years and spent 13 years in the field of alternative dispute resolution. In other words, mediation and some high stakes disputes. I happened to work in the field of family law and family mediation. So that, as you might imagine, involved a number of divorce and child custody disputes. In fact, that made up the vast majority of my practice for 13 years. So the world clearly has processes and structures for what it deems to be the resolution of conflict. Yet, for all of the success that my clients had in mediation, and it was substantial numerically, I would say about 2/3 of the cases resolved in one way or another, which meant they didn't have to go to court and be decided on by a judge, which here in the dream is a very important thing. But none of the conflict is ever resolved in that way. It may appear so on the surface, but as long as you still perceive yourself as separate from your brother, the conflict is very much alive. It's real to you and it's not resolved. Let's say this again. As long as you perceive yourself as separate, as long as you perceive that there are other separate people out there, then conflict just persists. It defines your experience because conflict is not resolved out there. It's resolved in here. The solution to what appears to be our collective plight here in the world is internal. It's in the mind that conflict is recognized for what it is, namely nothing, and set aside for all time. And yes, it is that simple. Now, we do not make that easy on ourselves in the world because we refuse to accept truth just as it is. That's why all of the complication. We refuse to accept truth just as it is. What does this look like in the convention of language and words? Well, it looks like this. There is no separation of any kind, so how can there be a dispute? If there is no separate self and no separate other with whom to dispute anything at all, if there is no separation of any kind, there's no conflict. There's only perfect oneness. That is the sheer simplicity of this material, which we're invited to accept for ourselves fully and totally. We're invited to let truth be just as it is. So when you speak to your inner teacher, this is a very handy prayer. It's a very handy thing to ask for. Help me to allow truth to be just as it is. Help me allow truth to be just as it is. Your inner teacher does not perceive any conflict. Your inner teacher perceives only perfect oneness. And that's why here in chapter 7, section 6 of the text that we're going through right now, that's why the text tells us that the Holy Spirit does not attack. The Holy Spirit never attacks because he doesn't perceive conflict. It does not perceive conflict. Your inner teacher does not perceive separation. We're being invited here with A Course in Miracles to learn to perceive truly, to learn to perceive as our inner teacher perceives. In other words, to perceive with our inner teacher, inner part of you. It's part of your mind that sees things as they are. We're invited to bring the whole mind to this inner teacher. What happens when we really do that? We see things as they really are. We perceive truly. From there, this true perception is easily translated into knowledge, the knowledge of God. In other words, we're right back where we've always been, at home in God. This is what we call awakening. It's what people refer to as enlightenment or whatever other language or terminology you wish to use. Use what speaks to you there. This is the process of awakening, is setting the ego aside, this false sense of self that wants you to believe that you're an individual self-sustaining survival unit, and other individual self-sustaining survival units are out to get you and take what's rightfully yours. They're out to get you. Conflict, battle, strife, in all of the myriad forms that takes in the world, including the one that is perhaps the most common, the conflict going on in here. Which is resolved by connecting with your inner teacher and allowing your inner teacher to direct your forgiveness. Bring everything in your experience to your inner teacher and don't hold anything back. That's how we learn to perceive truly. The Holy Spirit doesn't perceive conflict. It's meaningless. Why? There is no separation of any kind, so of course it's meaningless. There's no separation, there's no conflict. There's no separate part of anything to oppose another separate part. There's only oneness, perfect oneness. So this is what we do. We set conflict aside. The Holy Spirit doesn't want us to understand conflict. He wants us to understand that it's meaningless. Because it's meaningless, it's not understandable. It's nothing. That's what our inner teacher wants us to understand, is that conflict is meaningless. There is no conflict. Here in the world, there appear to be wars. There appear to be all sorts of forms of combat. That is simply one extreme example. There are plenty of other examples. All of them stem from the one mistake of separation, the one mistake that needs correcting. This is accepting atonement for ourselves. Now, if you're new to A Course in Miracles, and even if you're not, when we accept what the Course refers to as atonement for ourselves, we're accepting the correction of our inner teacher. We're accepting the correction of our perception of how we see things. This Course aims at a complete reversal of the thought system of the world. We right the ship, so to speak. We turn everything right side up. Our perception is upside down. Now, here in the world, we say, well, we turn it on its head, turn it upside down. No, it's already upside down. We're turning perception right side up. We do this under the guidance of our inner teacher. Conflict is completely meaningless. There's only perfect oneness. Conflict is not understandable, and any effort that we make to come to grips with it and to understand it is simply a delay. It's simply delaying our awakening because we're looking for answers where they cannot possibly be found. There are no answers in the world that appears out there because there is no out there. There is no world out there. All of this drama is taking place in our mind. Where do we go to resolve said drama? Our mind. This is a course in mind training. Now, A Course in Miracles comes right out and says that verbatim. I'm aware that not every spiritual tradition does that, but let's think about this for a moment. Every spiritual tradition is mind training, isn't it? The outward forms appear to differ, but that's all. One of the main and most persistent lessons of A Course in Miracles is our inner teacher's urging, our inner teacher's guidance to us to pay attention to the extraordinary difference here in the world between form and content. The outward form appears to differ. That accounts for the various spiritual and religious traditions that exist in the world. The outward form varies, but the essence, the core, is the same. Setting the ego aside, awakening. That's why Jesus says in the Manual for Teachers that this course is just one part of what he refers to as a universal curriculum, a universal course. Awakening is that universal course. Which form, which door do you open? Which road do you take? I don't know, whatever you're called to take. Now, many of you are here because you're called to take this particular road. So it's mind training. Is it for everybody? Well, of course it is. Of course it is. It's the universal curriculum. It's the universal course, and each and every one of us will wake up. You may not do it in this lifetime. In fact, you could deny everything that you hear from, not just from me, but from any spiritual teacher in any tradition, anywhere, anytime. You could think it's all a complete load, bunk. Yet I know you don't because you're watching this video. There's something about this course that has drawn you in. It's not the image on your screen. It's your inner teacher speaking to you. That's what's drawing you in. You're hearing the call and you're answering it. Excellent. Please continue to do so. We all thank you for that. Everyone does, whether they know you or not, or whether they're ever going to acknowledge your dedication and commitment or not. I will. Thank you for that. There are many doors. So not everyone will study this course in this lifetime, but everyone will awaken. How can we state this with so much certainty? Because it's already taken place. We've never left our source. Ideas, you and me, all of us, ideas leave not their source. You're right where you've always been. We're simply waking up to that. In other words, we're removing the barriers to our awareness of truth. We're removing the barriers to our awareness of perfect oneness, which, by the way, is the course's definition of heaven, the awareness of perfect oneness. And when you think about it, yes, just yes, what else would it be? So there is no conflict, despite what all of the world and our social media feed and all of the body's senses tell us. There is only perfect oneness. So one of the things that practically comes up for just about every spiritual practitioner, no matter how experienced or whether you're just starting out, we all hear messages from people that are projecting their own fear, by the way, that we're in denial. How can you say that none of this is real? Well, it's not real. What does your inner teacher tell you? I mean, why watch videos like this if you don't know? There's a lot of other content out there. Then you know that these words in this course are true. You can simply feel it, right? Even if it's something that you can't find the words for and articulate at the moment, so what, right? So what? We're all here because we're answering the call. So we all hear from people that were in denial. So the Course has this to offer. The constructive use of denial is denying the power of anything not of God to affect you. Let's break this down. Denying the power of anything not of God to affect you in any way. So, what is not of God? Anything that changes. God is perfectly changeless. Anything that changes is not of God. It cannot affect you. Anything that shifts or transforms is not of God. It cannot affect you. Anything impermanent is not of God. It cannot affect you. Now, who's you? Well, you're not the physical body. You're not this image that you see when you look in the mirror. This is fragile. No matter what kind of shape you're in, this doesn't last forever. Does it? Of course it doesn't. It doesn't. So that is included in anything that shifts and transforms, anything impermanent. God is. That means only God is. This is a statement of truth. Truth is actually beyond words entirely, but that's as close as we can come here in the world to talking about it with the convention of language that we all use to communicate with one another. Nothing that's impermanent can affect who you really are. So the more you get in touch with your inner teacher, the more you forgive the Son of God and the world and yourself and everything that appears in your entire experience. The more you do that, the more you begin to have experiences that show you, that prove to you that these ideas are true. Don't take it from this image on your screen that these ideas are true. Now, we want you to take that for yourself from your own experience. Now, who's helping you experience that inner teacher, inner part of you? When you do this course, when you do as suggested by your inner teacher, your experiences will show you, they will prove to you that these ideas are true. So I won't prove anything to you, which has to come as a substantial relief. Because in order for us to fully realize and appreciate the power of our own minds, we have to do this ourselves. We have plenty of help. But it would be doing us a tremendous disservice for God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit to simply swoop in and fix everything. First of all, God would never swoop in and fix anything because he doesn't recognize any problem. There is no separation. Our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, sees all of our drama and doesn't believe it, and teaches us, if we let him, teaches us the way back, how to let it all go. And it's the experience that we begin to have in the world that proves that these ideas are true. So if you are serious about resolving conflict for all time, the answers are not out there, they're inside, they're in your mind. All right. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I really appreciate all of the comments and questions and the discussion and dialogue that we've had here lately. That really is very beneficial to so many people. So thank you to all of you who have typed and sent your questions and comments, and I invite you all to do that. This is a process of self-inquiry, so inevitably along the way, there are going to come days in spiritual practice where this doesn't feel like it's working. Maybe today. And if you have questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. Now, the subscription button is right here in the corner of your screen. Go ahead and click on that red icon, that arrow in the corner, and join us. We'd love to have you. And I will see you again very soon. Thanks so much for joining me.